So, like I said, Nadia is a fellow grad of Kutztown University's Cinema, Television, Media Production Department, just like many of the other guests that we've had on the show so far. So, I guess I'm just going to ask you some general questions. So, how did you decide that video production is something that you want to do?
Oh, that's a long story. All right, you ready for this?
Oh boy, yes, I am. Buckle,
So,
everyone.
it's probably not as long of a story as I'm making it seem, but basically, in sixth grade, and it's funny because I was just talking to her today, but or no, I'm sorry, it was seventh grade. I have to be specific here. I had a friend, her name was Rachel, and
Mm.
she had a Sony Handycam camcorder, and she used to make all these silly little videos, and I got kind of interested in it that way, because we'd make stupid dance videos, or we made one called the Spelling Bee, where we pretended to be all these different characters and all these costumes, and we would edit all these together, and it was fantastically awesome at the time. But looking back on some of these projects, it's like, what were we doing?
Exactly. I think
But
we've all been there. Yeah.
yeah. So it all started off where, whenever she'd come over or I'd go over to her house, we'd always just record these videos. But then I was like, you know what? I kind of want to do this on my own too. So then I got the same camcorder because I didn't know any better about cameras. So I got myself a Sony Handycam, which I still have,
Mm.
and it doesn't work anymore. But I just started making videos on my own, and I just kind of grew to love it, I guess. So that's my long-winded story, where I just kept recording, throughout the years. And when the big question came up, it's like, what do you want to do with your life? I was like, well, this is all I do. This is all I like to do. So here we are.
So, with those early videos, was it just kind of like any thought that popped into your head, or was it kind of more focused on like short films or music videos, or?
Oh, a little bit of everything.
Hmm.
I I still have some of these videos. Music videos is a big one.
Hmm.
I still have them all listed privately, on my YouTube account, so nobody can ever see these. Sorry.
I
But
did the same thing. I can't complain.
yeah, yeah, it's like we all have these little secret videos, and like we did stupid stuff like Linkin Park songs, and like
Yeah.
we were trying to look cool, we were trying to like rock out, and like we recorded in a cemetery for one, and
Oh
like we
boy.
were like, yeah, we're bad, yeah, we're cool. So yeah.
Do you have a guilty pleasure video that you like to look back on, like the one that's like objectively by our standards today, probably not great, but one that you're like, oh, but that was still a good time making that.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few. If some of them happened, like right at the cusp of like college beginning.
Hmm.
So, because we all know most of us when we started were not that great.
Yeah. Exactly.
I had no prior training. So yeah, there's a couple. There's one that's actually live on YouTube. It's really embarrassing. I used to go to DeSales before I went to Kutztown, so it
Mm.
was a video about a haunted horse, um, slash Indian tribal chief ghost who was like haunting the university and killing people.
Mm.
And it's terrible. It's absolutely horrible, but it was so fun to make, and I just love that one so much. And then the one that I mentioned before, the spelling bee,
Hmm.
that we made back in like seventh grade, that was a masterpiece. But we lost it, unfortunately, and I was just talking to
Oh
Rachel today
no.
about it, and unfortunately it's gone forever, but maybe we'll remake it one day in the future because it was too funny.
Do an anniversary edition where you correct all
Yeah.
the mistakes. I think that
Yeah.
that's kind of true of like anybody in this field. I the one thing I keep on bringing up is about in regards to the early projects. Anyway, it's like you got to imagine Steven Spielberg probably looks back on Jaws and is like, "Oh man, what a piece of shit! I hate that so much,"
Yeah.
which is so weird to think about. But I think that anyone who looks back on their early work kind of has some disdain for what they do.
Yeah, but at the same time, that's a good thing. Whoop, sorry, I just hit my camera.
No, it's
That's a
okay.
good thing, because when you look back on stuff and you see like, oh, I could do that so much better now, it's like you see how much you've progressed and you see how much better you can do now.
Hmm.
So I think it's very it's a good thing when you look back and you're like, ugh, what did I
Exactly.
do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then, we, like I said, we both went to Kutztown. You started off at DeSales, and then I guess you transferred to. At what point did you transfer to Kutztown?
So I was at DeSales for one semester, and it didn't feel right for me. It didn't feel like the right place. I wasn't really fitting in, and it was just it was too like strict in certain ways for me. So I did meet my like absolute best friend there, though.
Hmm.
So she's still like my ride or die, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
But I just didn't feel right there, and she didn't either. So she actually transferred out, and her decision to transfer kind of affected me because I'm like, well, I don't want to be here. She's not here. But obviously, we didn't transfer to the same school. She
Right.
transferred down in Philly, and I transferred to Kutztown. And that's actually another funny story. I don't know if you want to hear it,
No, by all
but
means, go ahead.
well, basically, Professor Barish.
Yes.
I love Professor Barish. I think he's so great. And he's the reason that I actually transferred because in high
Hmm.
school I had a internship with a newspaper called the Express Times in Easton.
Hmm.
And I was in like an intern there for the features department, so I did a bunch of articles and stuff for them. And I met this guy who actually ended up being a professor at Kutztown, who wasn't Professor Barish. I'll get to that. Um,
Hmm.
he was Dr. James Ogden, and he
Okay.
was actually in the marketing department. He's fantastic. I love him too. And he brought me on from that internship into my next internship, which was with him at the marketing and entertainment company. And through him, I went to like this after party thing that we did for a project that we were working on, and Professor Barish was there.
Hmm.
And I met him, and we started talking about Kutztown. And I was telling him at the time that I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go because I wasn't in school in college yet at the time. I was still in high school, and he was
Right.
telling me about Kutztown's program, and I didn't even know they had a program. So,
Hmm. I was the
you
same
know,
way. I was very like because I think anyone who like wants to do what we want to do, they immediately look to like NYU or like
yes,
Art Institute of Philly. You
hmm,
don't think that there's going to be this amazing film program that's out in the middle of the Amish and Mennonite fields of Kutztown.
right, exactly, yeah. So I found out about the program through him, and later on, I saw him again, and he was telling, and I was at DeSales, and I was telling him, I'm like, I'm not feeling DeSales. He's like, well, come to Kutztown, and I was like, well, okay then, I'm coming to Kutztown. So I applied, I got accepted, and I started about a week late into the second semester of freshman year.
Hmm. So then, how would you summarize your experience with Kutztown? How was that for you?
Oh, I loved Kutztown, and I wish I could stay there forever.
Hmm.
But with the same people, because I loved all of the people I met too. They're just incredible. I mean, it's always great to meet new people, but I want everybody to stay with me, and we can live in college forever. But
Exactly.
I loved it so much.
Yeah,
You know.
there's a certain kinship amongst that entire department. I feel like even if you're
Yeah,
not directly friends with
absolutely.
somebody, it's still this like feeling of like we're a family.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So what has your post Kutztown life been? I know you work at Greenleaf now.
Yes, yeah, I work at Greenleaf Productions in Bethlehem. I'm an assistant editor and occasionally also a camera operator, which is like my biggest passion, I guess. I love being behind the camera. I love being able to create. I'm still learning.
Hmm.
I'm not like, you know, I'm not a Spielberg, but I like to experiment and I like to kind of see what I can do. So I really love when I get to go on shoots and I'm on camera, especially in like the creative aspects. If they're like, oh, go, get some beauty shots or something. I'm like, oh yes, that's so exciting. Um, But yeah, and then I'm also an assistant editor, and I with that I do a lot of organization and prepping of footage for the senior editors, and I take all the media, I bring it all in, I multi-group it together so that they can view it in multiple cameras all at once.
Right.
And I'm sorry, my cat just came up, and he's so cute.
It's okay.
Oh, I just scared him away because I laughed. He's very scaredy. But anyway, but yeah, so we work with Avid Media Composer, which is completely different than anything I worked with in college, because at DeSales we used Final Cut, and then at Kutztown we used Premiere.
Yeah.
So I had to learn this whole other editing system once I started interning there, and it was like the biggest pleasant surprise after my internship when I found out that I was going to be brought on, and I was so happy because the people there are so great. I love the people there, and it's a fun time.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I totally identify with the Avid thing, because I was in the same boat with PBS, where it's like you said, when I was at Kutztown, well, first of all, in high school I had a lot of Final Cut experience, and then I think the first maybe semester or two, for some of the production classes, they let you choose between if you wanted Final Cut or Premiere. But then pretty much after that, it was kind of like Premiere is what we use. And so to go from like that, it's you're right. It's three completely different beasts. So that's always. I mean, but like
Right.
there is some similarity I found between like Premiere and Avid. But again, it is very it's very intimidating looking at it from the
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah, and now it's funny because I haven't used Premiere since I graduated, and I feel like I'm more comfortable with Avid now. And it's weird
Exactly.
because it's I
Yeah.
worked with Premiere for 3 years. I've only worked with Avid for about two. So
Hmm.
it's I don't know, I'm just kind of more used to Avid now, and I think Avid has its issues with being real finicky, as I'm sure you've figured out, but I love that you can
Definitely.
multi-group everything.
Hmm.
And I think there is a way to do that in Premiere, but I never learned.
It's not
Um,
as straightforward as Avid's is, which is such a
yeah,
weird thing to say, that Avid is more straightforward at
I
something
know, I
than
know.
another program. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
yeah, Avid is really fun. And it does definitely come with its problems. I just recently, through this whole quarantine thing, we had to move my office setup at PBS to here, and my computer is not nearly as powerful as Avid, and so all of the footage and all that is on backup drives, so nothing happens.
Mm,
And so I edited this entire episode of this show that I work on, and it was done. It was ready to be sent to the master control people so they could broadcast it. And right when I was going to export, the program crashed, and when I opened it up again, I couldn't open the bin. And then it told
mm,
me the bin was corrupted, so I had to do some deep diving into the attic folder or whatever to retrieve the the data. It's stressful, but
yeah.
I'm glad that it has fail safes like that.
Do you work on the shared server at PBS too?
Yeah, they have a whole bunch of different servers, and their Nexus client manager thing is divided up into different servers for different shows. So they have a master server for all the individual projects, but then all the raw footage and all the elements will be delegated to the individual servers. Like the show I'm on, it has a couple terabytes worth of space, and then all the elements and all the raw footage goes onto there, and then I edit from on a different server where the projects and all that are. I don't even completely understand it. It's all sorts of different engineering
Yeah,
problems
yeah,
that
I
get
get
worked
that.
out.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn more about it. But it's kind of I have to do it, and I have to do it often to for it to stick, because it's so difficult sometimes for it to just stick in your brain, okay, this is
Hmm.
how this works, and we still record to tape and everything.
Hmm.
um so it's if a tape gets corrupt, it's oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah, it's all sorts of different problems that
hmm,
no one understands. And then when you try to explain the problem to someone else, it's just in one ear and
yeah.
out the other.
But it made me figure out that so sometimes when you're feeling oh man, I'm so dumb, I don't understand any of this. And then I
Mm-hmm.
go home and I'm like, Mom, and I'm like trying to explain to her, like,
They're like, you're a
all this stuff.
genius.
Yeah, she's like, wow, you know all of this. And I'm like, I guess I do.
Yeah, I definitely
Exactly.
enjoy that. The momentary power trip definitely makes it all feel a little bit better.
Yeah, it's just like my analogy for it is like with my guitar.
Hmm.
I love to play guitar, but I'm not that great. But when I'm playing around people who don't know how to play anything, oh, I feel like I'm freaking I don't know.
Bob Dylan or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
I couldn't for the life of me, every guitarist in the world just like went out of my brain. But
it's
but
okay.
yeah, and then like when somebody who actually does play, like I have a friend, for example, Nick, oh my God, he's like crazy, crazy good. And I'm never gonna play in front of him because I'm like, no, not that good.
Definitely, there's a little worry of it's like it kind of translates to whenever whenever you're working with people who've been in the industry longer, it's kind of like you feel like a little
Hmm.
baby in comparison almost.
Exactly. And then when they watch you, oh, that's the worst.
Yeah,
Oh, I can't be watched.
you
Like,
could
do
be like
not
the
look over
most
my shoulder.
amazing, like competent person in the entire world by yourself, and you're like going through everything really quick and solving everything really fast. Then, as soon as they're like, okay, you're going to be working with this other person, even regardless of if they know what they're doing or not, all of that just like goes completely out the window. I
Yeah,
found.
yeah. Or like my biggest issue is like if there's a problem, like I'm like, oh my God, there's a problem. And I'm like, what do I do? And if the immediate solution doesn't work, I panic. And I'm like, oh no. And it's like I need to like kind of channel, myself a little bit and figure out, okay, well, if A didn't work, there's also B and C. Try those. I
Exactly.
said B and C. Ha, ha, ha. It was a dad joke. I hang out with my one coworker too much. He makes too many dad jokes.
The joys of being a video production person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at least there were no C-47 jokes yet.
So we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I guess we're gonna get a bit more general. So we talked about how you got your start and all that, and you're like making videos with your Sony Handycam and all that. I found that a lot of people who want to be involved in some sort of artistic pursuit, whether that be like music, like songwriting or painting or video production and all that, they kind of like inherently have this like drive to like be creative and do interesting things. But one thing I
Mhm.
found in particular with video production people, if you ever listen to an interview with like a director or like an editor or all that, they'll say like, yeah, inherently I kind of I've always been interested in filmmaking or video production and all that, but there was this one movie or this one moment I had that like kind of just reaffirmed everything for me and made me believe that I could do that. Do you have a moment like that or a movie that really inspired you back when you were starting out?
I don't I don't really recall like a specific movie or show. I knew that, when I was watching shows, I always thought, oh, that'd be so cool if I was on that crew.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with Supernatural. So I was always dreaming about like, oh my gosh, if I could be on that set. But it was never like a moment for me that like any specific show or movie that really kind of clicked with me. It was more just getting out and doing it myself.
Mm.
And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna make a movie. That was
Mm.
it. I just decided I'm gonna make one. And freshman year of high school, I actually got pulled out of class for a special program. And in that special program, it was set for me to work on, my career goals and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I that sounded really conceited. I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's
didn't.
okay.
I didn't mean it to sound like that, but that's what happened.
I think a
So,
lot of high schools have that sort of like that one class where it's like do research or focus on
yeah,
what you want to do. My high school had something similar to that, so
yeah.
doesn't sound
So
conceited at all.
okay, good, good. 'Cause it's like that's just what happened. I'm not you know. But so I got pulled out, and I met with a special counselor, and she would tell me like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. Well, this is what I like to do. I like to make videos. So she told me, okay, well, I want you to make a video. And I was like, shh, I'm gonna make a movie. So I made a movie. It was about 40 minutes. It's terrible, and I will never show anybody.
What was it about?
It was about a girl named Wendy, and she was a terrible dancer, horrible dancer, but she wanted to win a dance competition. And her best friend, Randall, they are both clearly, like, kind of really big nerds throughout the whole thing. It's very clear. I mean, like, I played Wendy, and it was bad. But Randall didn't want her to win because he thought, oh, she's going to get famous, and then I'm not going to have my friend anymore. So he hires this, like, mean girl to try to take down Wendy, and Wendy ends up winning, and everything's fine. So
No, yeah, I totally understand. Yeah, I did a similar thing my senior year. I was like, I'm gonna make this amazing. Well, it wasn't for a class, but I was like, because there was another kid in our school who was like the movie guy who like was like, oh man, he's gonna go to Hollywood one day, and he made like a full feature film, I think his like junior or senior year, and I was like, I'm not gonna be outdone. So I went out and I made a movie senior year. It was like an hour long, and it was this like terrible black and white like melodrama that the plot would take way too long to explain, but I'm sure I'll get into it one of these days. But it was like this sort of like a whodunit, like murder mystery type thing, and it was so I ended up playing the bad guy who like did the crime. It was so terrible. But
I think we all have some weird like indie black and white drama. I think everybody has one of those. Yeah. Just like everybody has one of those movies where it's like interior, morning, the alarm clock goes off.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
the
clock.
best way to start off any script. Morning with the alarm clock.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
I have a black and white melodrama that my best friend from DeSales and I made because she was in video too, and oh my gosh, it makes no sense at all. We were just like, let's go out and shoot something. And we tried to make it into like a Slender Man thing.
Oh my god! No, I did. That was my first idea. Is I wanted to make a Slender Man movie, and then that fell apart. So I was like, oh, okay, well, let's do this like simpler. Like you'll just have everyone in a room, and it'll be black and white, and it's a melodrama. So there. Yeah.
Slender Man was a big inspiration.
Yeah.
But it ended up being we turned Slender Man into, it was just like, it doesn't make any sense, but like her dad ended up playing this creeper who was like watching her in the woods, and like it's really weird. I don't know, it's on YouTube. If anybody cares, they could probably find it. It's not private, so
I'm just glad that I never finished my Slender Man project because it was so much worse. Man. But no, yeah, so if I can find that, I'll throw it up on the where I usually put the movie posters, and everyone can get a quick glimpse.
Man.